Hi, welcome back to All Day Live, our second hour. It's into the 1 o'clock hour now. I'm Amy Hawker. We're glad to be with you here to talk about a lot of the headlines that are going on. Also, we are following the weather that's moving into the area. It probably is snowing outside your window right now, if you're in the metro at least. And then those of you in western Minnesota, it was a doozy this morning. Overnight into this morning, highways were shut down, low visibility, zero visibility in some places, no travel advisories. That seems to have been lifted now, and cars are moving more fluidly. However, we're just keeping an eye on things here until about 6 o'clock. There's an advisory because of gusty winds and some conditions on the road. So we'll talk a little bit about that this hour. We want to also continue our coverage of Operation Metro Surge. You know, it's brought a lot of attention, of course, to Minneapolis specifically, but how is it playing out in other communities? Joining me now is Booker Hodges, the Bloomington Police Chief. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me.
You bet. So tell us, what have you been seeing in Bloomington as it relates to these ICE operations?
You know, we've been seeing federal agents make arrests in our communities. We've been seeing community folks also come out and observe those operations. So I think what we're seeing here is similar to what people are seeing all over the state of Minnesota.
I think it's important to clarify the differences between federal agents and local and kind of who's doing what. We know in Minneapolis they have a very specific separation ordinance. What's the policy protocol like in Bloomington with the PD there?
Yeah, so in Bloomington, we don't enforce immigration law. That is the role of the federal government. And the analogy I give is, you know, we're not going to have federal agents here enforcing speeding along Old Shakopee Road or Cedar Avenue. It's not our job to do immigration enforcement. That is a job that is bestowed upon the federal government to do.
You mentioned, Chief, that there have been detainments, arrests. Have you seen protests? Have you seen things kind of get out of hand the way that they have in Minneapolis?
No, we haven't observed or witnessed any activity like that, thank God, here in our city.
Mm-hmm. How about resources in Minneapolis? Just to compare, I remember Chief O'Hara saying about a month or so ago, if you see something and you want to, call 911 if it doesn't feel right, or he had some very specific words for the community. How have things been going with your department? Do you have enough resources to cover the calls that are coming in, responding to different things?
Yeah, we do. I think we're still the only large police department in the state that's actually overstaffed or have extra staff. So when people retire, we can not miss a beat when they retire. But yeah, we've been expending resources to make sure people are safe in hotels and making sure that those who are observing ICE or Homeland Security activity are also safe while they're doing that. So that's where we've been expending our resources at dealing with this.
When you're out and about in the public, or I guess I'm curious what you're hearing back from your officers on the street, what's the reaction been like from folks in Bloomington to the officers? Are they angry with you? Are they supportive? A mix? What's it been like?
Our community supports this police department here. So, I mean, we're blessed and fortunate for that. They do support us, and our community by and large understands the difference between us and federal authorities. But in the last 2 weeks, I've had multiple meetings with those in affected communities, and a lot of people in those communities feel like their voice in this is not being heard. And the sentiment that I'm going to convey on their behalf is the need for comprehensive immigration reform. They feel no one is talking about this. None of the candidates running for office is talking about this. None of the people blowing the whistles in the street is talking about this. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, if the federal agents packed up their bags and went home today, these laws are still going to be in place. And these people are still going to be fearful that something's going to happen to them, or they might be subjugated to some of this stuff. So that piece, I think, is on their behalf, I'm talking about, is not being discussed.
That's interesting. You're right. I guess I had not heard that perspective yet, and obviously it's coming from those in the affected communities. And I think some people are just trying to do something. They are trying to react. They're trying to have some control over it, feel helpful in some ways, but maybe not thinking about the periphery here. So that's really interesting. That's something that definitely we should talk more about, specifically, what people can do, I guess, if they would prefer to take that route, and instead of showing up, on protest lines, maybe there are other options that would be more helpful. And just speaking from I think some people want to do what would be helpful for these communities, and if they're saying that that's most helpful.
And if they listen to the communities, right, listen to the people who are affected by this. Right? Get people want to do something, right? But the people who are affected by this, the ultimate solution for a lot of these folks is a law change, right? And the immigration system we have now is so convoluted. So I'll give you this example, right? In Minnesota alone, federal officials told us a few months ago that there were 33,000 people here subjected to federal removal orders, meaning that they were scheduled to be removed from the country. And people will listen to that and go, wow, that's a lot of people. Mm-hmm. Well, a good chunk of these people have done every single thing that they've been asked to do, right? So if someone's come from a country like Liberia, back during when people were having the conflict over there, and they said to come to America, you had to do X, Y, and Z, but at some point you could be deported back to your country. Those people have done everything that, the country, America, has asked them to do. And now with the policy change, some folks are now being deemed to be removed. So when you hear that 33,000 people scheduled for removal, it's not as simple as that. And to me, that's just one example of how complex this immigration issue is. And the complexity of this it shouldn't be understated for what this is. It's not just a willy-nilly law that's black and white, and I think people don't understand that. Now, those in the affected communities really want a law change. You have people here who are doing what they're supposed to do, right? We don't want criminals here. You commit crimes, you're a rapist or a drug dealer. I don't care where you come from. You can come from Alabama, Mississippi, or, Russia. I don't care. We don't want you here. Take all those people out of here all day. And that's, I think, what we were told was going to happen. I think that's what most people would be accepting of, but the affected communities really are wanting some type of law change, and they're just not seeing people out here advocating for that at this point.
I think that's a good point. There's a lot of blanket statements being made, on both sides, right? A lot of blanket statements. But when you brought that up, it was interesting because you and I were talking earlier, and I don't want to get too far in the weeds on some of this, but I think it's an important point, as you brought up, for instance, someone from Liberia or Laos, that when they came to this country, likely signed paperwork, right, that said, you could be deported if things calm back down in your country. There are some very specific things that most people, including me, I just learned that this morning. So there are things that people may not know, right? So there's that piece of it. And then, but also, I guess, as you're looking around, and maybe not so much in your community, or maybe in your community, but there are so many videos online that we're all taking in right now, and it's hard to know heads from tails. And sometimes you see just one snippet of a video, you don't know what happened before, you don't know what happened after. What would be your message to people as they're taking in all of this and they're consuming all of this information, and it's then informing their actions? What do you want them to know about the things that they're seeing right now in our community?
We see some of the things, and they're egregious, right? Associated with everyone involved in these videos. And I think whenever people fail to recognize or accept the humanity of others, this is what you get, right? If I don't view you as human, what rights do you have, right? If I don't view you as human, who cares if I throw bricks at you, right? We need to get back to looking at and viewing each other as human beings, regardless if we disagree with each other or not. And I don't know how we get there for some of these people, but we need to, or we're going to continue to see this stuff.
Yeah, it does feel like we're at this tipping point, and we're starting to see it, I guess, in tone with Governor Walz, Mayor Fry, where there was a little bit more of a kind of fiery tone out of the gate about a week and a half ago, and then they've started to kind of walk that back a little bit in tone is, I think, what we're seeing now. Have we reached this point where, you know, I know when I interviewed Chief Axel Henry, St. Paul PD, a month and a half ago or two before all of this, he said at that time, yeah, I'm looking at ways that we can try to head this off at the pass, that we can try to bridge some gaps here. It doesn't mean we're helping, you know, these federal law enforcement agents, but, you know, what do you say to people who are just throwing up their hands saying, well, we seem to be at an impasse here?
Well, I think, you know, we're trying to work through some things here, and I'm going to leave it at that. Okay. We can't allow what's happening to continue to happen. It's not feasible, and it's not good for our communities. It's not good for our state, and it's not good for our country. So we'll try to work through some of these things. Yeah.
How do you think the general public, Chief, do they realize how much politics may be playing a role in all of this? On both sides?
I hope they do. Right? I mean, you know, policing and public safety and politics don't mix. Right? That's why historically there's been things put in place to try to limit using, you know, public safety resources for politics. And whenever you have public safety, specifically policing and politics mix, you're going to have problems. And obviously, I think on both sides of this now, you see that being played out. And often in the political arena, there are more pawns than there are people who are rooks and kings and bishops, and for sure, kings and queens. And I think for people to understand the political piece of this, look and see, just do whatever you can to make sure you're not a pawn in someone else's chess game.
Finally, do you have any advice for folks who, you know, I think one of the things we can try to do in the media is we're taking in so much information too, and trying to stay as balanced as possible, is give people resources to keep people safe, because I think hopefully everybody can agree that safety is something that we all are concerned about. Is there anything that you would want folks to know as they're thinking about, got a lot of first-time protesters out here, we're seeing them, right? We know that they're out there. Things you want them to know to keep everybody safe?
Yep. You know, and I'll just say this, right? United States of America, First Amendment to the Constitution is the First Amendment. Right? It gives you the ability to go out here and exercise your rights, right? But you do not get to assault law enforcement officers, period. I mean, federal or local, everybody's still a law enforcement officer, whether you agree or disagree with the laws that they're enforcing. So my message is just go out here, express your First Amendment rights, but do not assault or interfere with law enforcement. And if you witness things that people are doing that's unconstitutional and whatnot, we have to report those things, right? And it's incumbent upon us to try to figure out where to report those things to. And I know that that's some of the things that those of us in local law enforcement are working on now to figure out, you know, if you do have a complaint against somebody who's a federal agent, where does that go? You know, and that's, we have to figure that out. But just, you know, just do what you need to do. Just go out here, express your rights, but do not interfere or assault law enforcement officers. That's not going to be good for anybody.
All right, Chief Hodges, thanks for checking in. We really appreciate it. I know, talking to you earlier, you along with other departments, everybody's exhausted. The community's exhausted, really, and a lot of people just feeling helpless right now. So we appreciate your time and your insight into this, and we'll check back in with you soon.
All right, and everybody likes skiing. Get out, go skiing today. There's a lot of snow out here now.
Get some fresh air, yeah. All right, Chief. All right. Take care. Thanks for your time.
Yep.
All right.